Hey, everybody, welcome to Jim Harold Live, and so glad to be with you. I guess I could say once again, but this is a new thing that we're doing. It's actually a little bit of an experiment. Back in 2020, when we had the pandemic going on, I started doing a lot of live streaming and carried that into 2021. And honestly, just got so busy, was moving houses, so busy with the audio podcast that I just kind of got away from it. And every time when we have one of our holiday parties, our Halloween parties, or those kind of things, I really missed it. So I thought in 2023, we're going to do something new. We're going to do something called Jim Harold Live. And the reason I named it so vaguely is because I'm still figuring out what it is. So today I'll give you a little bit of idea of what you're about to see. First, we are going to do a little bit of paranormal news. There wasn't very much paranormal news in the news because of the holiday. We have a couple of items. Then we have a very special guest. Ryan Sprague will be joining us, and every week we will do our best to get a guest on and rotate. And it may be somebody from the world of the paranormal. It may be somebody outside of the world of the paranormal. Probably more paranormal people than not. In the third segment, I will do a campfire story. I will read you a campfire story. And then finally, we'll do a little Q&A from the audience. And I hope that everybody kind of likes that configuration. We're going to be playing around. This is like a laboratory. This is to see what you like and what you don't like. So first up, let's get to some paranormal news. And this was an interesting article. It was in mirror.co.uk. And I thought it was really interesting because we have a lot of people from Britain who listen. And this particular article talked about the 10 most popular paranormal beliefs, including ghosts, aliens, and witches. And certainly go read the original article over at mirror.co.uk. Now, the thing that was interesting, their top 10 list were ghosts were number one, aliens and UFOs were number two, reincarnation number three. Four, that the JFK assassination was an inside job. Now, I don't know why that's on a list of what's basically paranormal stuff. Witches, which I don't know what there's to believe in. There are absolutely people who consider themselves witches. Mind reading psychics, demons at 7, 8, the Illuminati, 9, Bigfoot, 10, werewolves. So those are the top 10, they call them unconventional views of Britons. And in that article over at mirror.co.uk, I thought it was very interesting that they also mentioned that only 43% of Britons consider themselves believers. And it seems to me that that's probably a lower percentage than the US. And if we have any British folks in the audience, I'd be interested. Somebody said, don't trust the Mirror. I know that they're not considered like the New York Times, but unfortunately, Phil, not enough other publications had paranormal news this week. So it's interesting to me how different countries view things. Now, for example, Phil, I know, is a believer and he is British. And I agree with the commander here. It's time for a serious study of the flying rod phenomena. I think that's true. So anyhow, the point being that it is interesting to me what people do and don't believe in. Even myself, I've said this before. I have different things that I have different levels of belief in. For example, UFOs, I'm a 9.5 out of 10. I mean, they're definitely UFOs. There's no question about that. What they are, who knows? Who exactly knows what they are? I think that sometimes folks are mistaken. Unfortunately, they're hoaxers. There's military, and then there's other. And in the other, that's where I believe the ET question comes into play. Although, I've got to say, I think it's also possible that there could be things like time slips and multiverses and those kind of things. So I kind of think it's all of the above, but I definitely believe in the reality of them. Now, Bigfoot, and I've said this multiple times on the shows, sometimes I feel like, yeah, there's definitely Bigfoot. People of good character have reported seeing it. And also, if you look at something like that Patterson Gimlin film, that is, pretty believable once you see the stabilized, zoomed in version. It looks like muscle tone. Then the next day I say, well, they haven't found DNA, they haven't found hair, they haven't found a body. So I kind of vacillate back and forth. So even amongst those who believe, I think there's a lot of difference. The other item that we got, and again from the UK, is from the Daily Mail. And basically, this was an exclusive, so they got first right to it. And it was concerning Jacques Vallée. Jacques Vallée was interviewed by them, and apparently, the Trinity UFO crash from 1945, that in the new military spending bill, it was amended to take the look back of UFO cases back to 1945, which would include this Trinity case. And actually, on the Paranormal podcast about maybe 4 months ago, I interviewed Jacques Vallée himself about this particular case. And Jacques Vallée, of course, Dr. Vallée was the inspiration for Francois Truffaut's character in Close Encounters. And here's the quote from the article, and I am quoting from them, so make sure to check out the original source over at dailymail.co.uk. The National Defense Authorization Act, which passed Congress this month, includes a section requiring the Department of Defense's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO, say that 3 times real quick, to review and prepare a report on all previous government investigations of UFOs dating back to 1945. So I'm sure Dr. Vallée is very glad about that, and I think that's kind of neat. So I am excited that they will be taking that look back. And actually, we have a great guest on the line who we're going to talk about momentarily about this and a lot of other topics, what we can expect in 2023 in regard to the question of UFOs. And he's right there. I see him in the green room. I'm going to bring him in. I'm talking about the great Ryan Sprague. How are you, sir?
Hey, Jim. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be the inaugural guest on this endeavor. So, wishing you the best of luck and let's do it, man. 2023 is going to be an exciting year for UFOs, as you were
Well,
just
good.
talking.
Good. Yeah. Well, the thing is that I have mixed feelings, Ryan, and I want to get your opinion on this. Like so many people, when the stories came out in the Times and there was going to be this big report from the government and all of these different things, I was very excited and I was very hopeful. And it's like finally this question is being taken seriously. The government's going to shoot straight with us. We're going to get to the bottom of this. I was excited. And then as time has gone on, I think there's been a grudging acknowledgement that there is something real to the UFO question, that it is not a joke. However, I think it's very grudgingly, at least from some quarters in the government. When I saw something, and I've talked to you about this numerous times, when I saw the first big report come out, and it came out on 4 o'clock on a Friday on a summer's weekend, I thought, that's what you do when you want to bury a news story. Somebody wants to bury this. And as I see these new commissions and all these different things coming out, I'm just afraid it's another attempt by some quarters in the government to say, yes, we're addressing this. Yes, let's whitewash it again. Let's pat them on the head again, send them on their way, make it look good, make it look like we're checking into it. But in the end, it's going to be, well, it could be foreign actors. It could be hoaxes. It could be, photographic anomalies. But there's nothing in terms of an ETH situation. There's nothing in terms of a multiverse situation. Nothing really to be worried about. Am I too skeptical or am I just perceptive?
Uh, I think you're both, and I think that's extremely responsible. I mean, just today, we had a story come out that Russia is claiming to have shot down a UFO.
Yes.
This released in Newsweek. And, what it might be is anyone's guess. Is it a Ukrainian drone? Is it a Chinese drone? Is it American? Or is it something else? So you will always have this question of everything going on in the world today when it comes to UFOs and the government. Is this strictly something having to do with national security? Yes, it always is when you're dealing with UFOs and the government, and they are always going to be looking at it in that light. So when it comes to the ET hypothesis, it's something we can always keep on the table, and I do think they are keeping that on the table. That will always be on the table until it's not. So I think what we're seeing right now is a very sobering perception of UFOs and the government. Again, as we always do. And you're right. I think there has been kind of this the excitement ever since 2017 has sort of waned, and you are seeing that because of the Department of Defense, of this new office Arrow that has just opened up as well. You're seeing a lot of pushback by government claiming, within the last few months in the New York Times, it's nothing but space clutter, it's nothing but drones, it's this, it's that, it's anything but ET. But what I'm excited about in 2023 is the continued efforts of Congress people. You have members on both sides of the aisle who will not let Arrow, this new department within, office within the Department of Defense, won't let them just get away with saying, yeah, we're looking into it. We don't know. No, they are keeping the pressure on them to figure out what this stuff is. And that was no more, I think, apparent than with these congressional hearings that took place this past year in 2022 when it comes to the UFO topic. We saw that the people in charge of the new office in within the Department of Defense, they had no idea what was going on, Jim.
Mhm.
Absolutely no idea. And when asked and pushed on certain aspects of the UFO phenomenon, they couldn't answer. And that's alarming when the people in charge of a government UFO office have no idea what's going on. So I think Congress is what I'm most excited about going into 2023 when it comes to all of this, and those within Congress who are excited and are passionate about finding the truth behind the UFO issue.
And I think what's key, what you mentioned there, is from both sides of the aisle. Because if it were just one side of the aisle, the other side might say, oh, this is a Democratic or a Republican thing. We don't want any part of it. But the fact you're getting both sides, it kind of gives it that buy in that people from both sides who are interested in this and think it's important to investigate can look into it. So I think that is so key and very perceptive that you pointed that out. So maybe you could catch us up to speed. What were the big developments, do you think, in 2022? You talked about that special group AARO and so forth, but if you had to pick 3 or 4 highlights of 2022 before we get into 2023, what would those be?
Yeah, so I mean, when it comes to ARRO, it's exciting, but like you said, they are making it very apparent that a lot of what they're going to be looking into will not be made public, and they can always use the classification system to do that for good reasons, many, many good reasons, I'm sure. However, what happened right at the tail end of 2022 and now leading into 2023 is what I'm excited about when it comes to this whole government thing, and that was the National Defense Authorization Act that was signed into law by President Biden, and this actually involved new language that is going to have to be used within legislation with this new department, Arrow. And I do want to quote this exactly. I don't want to get it wrong here. These new provisions within this language that were in this bill, the NDAA, it said that Arrow will have to report directly to DoD leadership. So this means that they will have to report everything that they're doing, and that goes for any of the departments that they get information from, whether it's the CIA, the DIA, the Department of Energy, things like this, the Navy, the Air Force. Everything will have to go to leadership to be reviewed. An audit of government involvement in UAP since 1945. You mentioned that briefly in your intro. This is huge. This is no longer just going back to 2004 and the now famous Tic Tac UFO event. They're going to be looking at stuff from the past. And 1945 is key because within that you have the modern UFO era beginning in
Mhm.
1947 with the famous flying saucer Kenneth Arnold story, or
Sure.
the 1947 Roswell UFO crash. So it is possible that within the scope of this new office, they're going to be looking back at historical cases. So I think that's really important too. The other thing I found really fascinating about this new language in legislation is whistleblowers coming forward. They're kind of giving them a, I guess, immunity to come forward and say, if you've
Hmm.
ever worked on some sort of secret UFO program, or you were told to remain silent, or stuff like that, now's the time. You can come forward, you can talk about it with no repercussions. Now,
Oh, that's
obviously, there are
fantastic.
repercussions,
Right.
obviously, but yes, I think that's pretty cool as well. So, yeah, a lot to look forward to with this new bill that was signed into office by President Biden in 2022. I think it's really going to hold this new office, Arrow, under some pretty hot fire for sure.
For example, you talked about that look back language. They're going to look back at all these different events. One that I would love to see more information on is that I believe it was 1967, the Maelstrom Air Force Base, Robert Salas, where basically they had nuclear ICBMs. I can't remember if they were Minuteman missiles or Atlas or what was the going ICBM at the time, but it's an ICBM. And basically, he reported that there had been a UFO sighting, and simultaneously, these ICBMs had been taken offline and they couldn't control them, which is frightening. Now,
Yeah.
some people may see that as a threat from some other race in space, or some may see it as a warning. Don't play around with nuclear weapons. But the fact that the United States government, according to Salas, could not control its own nuclear weapons, that's tremendously powerful. And just, it's one of the many things in the UFO question that people just gloss over. And they just gloss
Yeah.
over it. And it's like, well, now, wait a minute. Do you understand what that means? If some whatever it is with a UFO could literally take nuclear weapons offline at their will, what the implications of that are. And a case like that, I would love to know more about that. That's one I think it's going to be very hard to get any information on. But there's a lot out there. I just hope that there are enough people still around and there's enough data that was not destroyed. So it's not just, oh, we looked at this, there was nothing to see.
Right. Well, and that is a prime example. You know, you look at that congressional hearing that just took place this past year, and you had Representative Gallagher really putting his feet down and saying, "Guys, Maelstrom, do you know what happened there?" And they said, "No, we have no information on that." And he said, what are you talking about? Like, you're the ones who are should be looking into this stuff. Like ICBMs, and I believe that were Minutemen missiles, were shut down during a UFO event. And look, they didn't know then, but they're gonna know now because we just learned from Robert Salas, like you mentioned, that he is going to be testifying to
Hmm.
Arrow, this new department, about the event. So we are seeing a proactive stance happening both with Arrow and with the Congress people pushing them to actually take this seriously, not just look at it as drones and foreign espionage. That there is a core phenomenon happening here. Whatever those things were in Maelstrom, maybe, maybe we saw early drone tech or something like that, but probably not. They shut them
Right.
down. What could actually do that? So I'm excited. I'm excited to hear what comes of Robert Salas's testifying to Arrow and what other cases will be looked at when it comes to nuclear sites and UFOs as well. So yes, a very good example you brought up.
What other developments do you see potentially in 2023? Things that you kind of have your eye on, in addition to these investigations by this body?
I'm looking at NASA as well. We have a completely separate investigation that's going to be going on with NASA and UAP. This actually started back in October of this past year. I mean, they have dozens and dozens of people, Jim, who are going to be involved in this NASA study when it comes to UAP. And what I think is really cool about this one is they're looking at it strictly from a scientific perspective, not national security. They will be reaching out to the government and looking at certain cases that the government is also looking at, but they're also going to be looking at civilian cases, and they're going to be going back into their archives when it comes to unexplained phenomena that has occurred that NASA has captured. So I think this is pretty cool. We're going to be looking at UFOs from a scientific perspective with NASA, the people who should have been doing this all along. What they come up with, we'll see. But I'm excited to see what comes of that for sure.
And I think many of us, when we look at this phenomena, we jump to the question of ET. And while I think it's very possible and I'm biased, probable that that's part of it, I'm not convinced that's the only part. I do believe that there are, for example, the Tic Tac video, it doesn't strike me that that was another military. But certainly, militaries around the world, the United States military, the Chinese military, the Russian military, although who knows how much they're able to do these days with their ongoing situation. But it seems to me reasonable to think that all of those governments and others fly secret craft, they're seen and they're reported. And they probably have some pretty amazing capabilities. I think people think that the height of avionic technology is still the stealth bomber, which is 40 years old. I mean, there's things that they have that we know nothing about, including probably some very, very sophisticated drones. So I don't discount that. And then, as we said, sometimes people are mistaken. Sometimes people outright, unfortunately, I don't think it's most of the cases, but people outright lie.
Mhm.
But what about that other category? Not the potential ETs. Do you think there are other explanations, multiverse, time slips, those kind of things that maybe we don't think about, those of us who are really latched onto that ETH hypothesis?
Yeah. I mean, I always go back to the early days of my UFO research when I did just think we were dealing with aliens. And now, some 20 years later into my UFO research, I'm no longer the young UFO researcher, which is depressing. But it's also exciting because you're getting these new ambitious theories coming out by very risky and I would say ambitious scientists, theoretical physicists, and academics, scholars, everybody looking at this topic in a brand new light, kind of picking up the pieces and looking at it differently. And I think it's cool that now we have these theories of multiverse or interdimensional or even time travel. The more we look into time travel, the more we're beginning to see that it might be possible not to just go into the future, but also into the past. So I think, everything's on the table until it's not. Just like I said with Arrow, they are still open to the possibility that some of this could be extraterrestrial. And that's a door we always have to keep open. And, I saw someone in your chat mention stealth bombers. We just had the B-21 Raider be unveiled here in the
Yes,
United States.
yes.
Fifth up to sixth generation technology. So who knows what we actually have in our arsenal here in the United States? And who knows what other countries have as well. So we do have to keep everything on the table. But I think 2023 is going to be the year that we have some revelations, both man made UFOs and possibly non man made. So, yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to have those debates.
So before we let you go, I want you to tell everybody where you can find everything you do. But any last thoughts on 2023 and what people should watch for and what you're watching for?
I'm watching for just a influx of reports every single day, Jim, since all of this has started back in 2017. I'm getting reports from pilots, military, and civilians about seeing UFOs. So, what I'm looking forward to is there's also a new group called the UAPIOC. I want people to keep an eye on this. This is the UAP Integration and Outreach Committee, and it's within the aerospace industry, and they're going to be looking at commercial pilot UFO reports. something the military hasn't looked into, and something that the FAA and civil aviation groups haven't looked into either. So I think 2023 is going to be the year of aviation safety when it comes to UFOs. So all I'm going to say is be careful when you're out there flying around, and keep a lookout for things in the skies. And now there's going to be a place to report those things. So I'm excited about that.
Well, there's always something interesting somewhere in the skies. See what I did there? So, Ryan, tell us where we can find everything you do. I know you're working on some exciting new projects. So, anything you can tell us about what's coming up and where everybody can find everything you do. And I recommend it everybody who's watching this and interested in UFOs. If you're not already, and most of you probably are, but if you're not already, follow this man. He is certainly one of the best and certainly the nicest.
Oh, thank you, Jim. I always appreciate coming on here and talking to you. Yeah, somewhere in the skies, I have a new book coming out this April, so be on a lookout for that. I'm on the new season of Ancient Aliens on the History Channel, which actually starts, I believe, tonight. Is the season premiere, or it might be tomorrow. So be on the lookout for a new season of that. You'll see me babbling all about UFOs on the 19th season of Ancient Aliens. I don't even know how they can call it ancient anymore.
I got to
But
tell you
yeah.
something. I don't know if you saw it in the chat, Ryan, but somebody said that you have the second best hair in ufology, right after Giorgio. That's got to be the
That's
greatest honor. When you look back on
I'm honored.
2023, that's going to be a personal highlight, I'm sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll have to invest in more pomade to beat Giorgio. So thank you to whoever said that. But no, Jim, it was my pleasure being here. I do the podcast every week as well, somewhereintheskies.com, which is available anywhere you get Campfire, anywhere you get the paranormal podcast as well. So no, thank you.
Ryan Sprague, he's one of the best. Ryan, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure, Jim. Take care.
Wow. Ryan is just one of the best. I absolutely love to talk to him, whether it's on video or audio, and really, really appreciate him taking time today. Now, I promised you a campfire story. So we have one. And I thought it would be kind of, since this is the first of the Jim Harold live shows, we would pick the first story from the first edition of Jim Harold's True Ghost Stories, or Jim Harold's Campfire Volume 1, True Ghost Stories. And this is one of my favorite all-time campfire stories. And I'm just going to, I was going to have sound effects and everything, but today we're just going to do it bare bones and basic, and I'm just going to read to you. And we might fancy it up a little bit as we go along. This one is called Would You Like a Spot of Tea? And it is by Dave in the United Kingdom. And I absolutely love this one. So I'll tell it from his perspective and basically read it from my book. And here goes. The thing is, this is kind of a secondhand story. My partner, Paula, her family, they describe themselves as spooky. Now, you sometimes meet people who have paranormal stories, and they've got like one paranormal story. And then you've got a person to whom this happens on a monthly basis. Her whole family is like that, Paula's family is. And I'm convinced that whatever experience a person sees is as much about them as it is about the experience. Now, Paula's family is willing to see whatever that exists as part of the other world. And I'm sure that whatever it must be hereditary as well. Because I meet so many people whose family has had these experiences, and my partner's family, they're just really into paranormal experiences. Now, Paula's mom, remember, he's from the UK. Paula's mom's experience is the most amazing I think I've ever heard. She often has small medical problems, so she's not particularly well. She goes into the National Health Service every now and again, and she lives in a place called Low Hill near Liverpool. And she was in the NHS ward after an operation with lots of other people there. They were all asleep, and she was up quite late. She just wasn't able to get to sleep that particular evening. And a nurse came around and talked to her for few minutes, and wanted to know if she wanted a cup of tea. And there was something about this nurse that seemed quite odd, but she couldn't put her finger on it at the time. The nurse went away, and she didn't come back for what seemed like ages. Actually, Paula's mom said it was about an hour before she came back with the cup of tea. And by then, Paula's mom realized what was strange. She put her finger on it. She had kind of an old-fashioned uniform on. Paula's mom asked her, "What's the deal with the old uniform?" And the nurse apparently smiled at her, said nothing, and walked away. The next morning, Paula's mom checked into the nurses that were on duty that night. And they said there was only one nurse on duty the previous night when she saw the nurse with the cup of tea. And it wasn't the one in the old-fashioned uniform. There was no one like that, and they'd have no reason to dress in an old-fashioned uniform. Paula's mom became more and more convinced that she'd actually seen a ghost. Now, these things happen to her quite a lot, spooky things. And Paula's mom sees psychics a lot. And this one particular psychic that she goes to, she asked this guy about this experience with this tea-toting nurse. She described what happened, and he did whatever psychics do, although Dave says he's not a believer in psychics. And this psychic said that he was getting a name. A name was coming through. The name was Lily. So the next time Paula's mom went into this hospital for a small operation, she engaged one of the nurses in a conversation about the hospital and the history of the hospital. And she told this nurse that she felt she had had an experience. And the nurse said, "Oh, what was that?" And Paula's mom described it and which ward it was in. And the nurse went, "Oh, that would have been Lily, of course." It turns out Lily was the resident ghost at that hospital. Now, Dave says he thinks that they had a bit of a discussion, but again, he got everything secondhand. People who worked at the hospital apparently had done some research because lots of people had seen this nurse. She'd never frightened anybody. She'd gone around and sort of just asked people if they needed any help, if they wanted a cup of tea. And whether she made all these people cups of tea, Dave is not quite sure. You know, Dave says we've all heard of a ghost talking to people, but never preparing food. I said to Paula's mom, "You should have tried to push it as far as you could go. Try to get a latte or something." So anyway, and he went on to comment how much he preferred those old-time nurses' uniforms to what nurses wear today. I won't comment on that, but a great campfire story, one of my favorites. So that is the meat of the show today, but we'll go and get some comments and also any Q&A you may have for the next few minutes. We don't want to make this too long. We want to make it short and sweet and something that you will enjoy hopefully every week. We'll be back next week at 12:30 Eastern with another one. And I have somebody in mind as a guest. I don't know if they'll be available, but I really look at this as just kind of an experiment. We're just kind of having fun. And we're going to see what works and what doesn't work. But I think the important thing is to talk with you and so forth. I do want to give a special shout out to my friend Bandrew Scott. He said, "Just a wee little thank you for all you do. Keep up the great work." I'm going to get the super chat sound effects and stuff going. Just didn't have time today, but he gave us a super chat of $4.99. And as Bandrew knows, microphones are expensive. So thank you, Bandrew. I really appreciate it. And by the way, check out his podcast, check out his YouTube videos. Bandrew is fantastic and really the preeminent microphone reviewer on the internet, bar none. The mic I'm talking into right now, I got because Bandrew said it was a great mic, and it is. So really, that's my thoughts on that. So thank you, Bandrew, very much. So let's go to this and get some thoughts. Hillary says she loved the new format. And again, this doesn't replace anything. Everything continues as is. Suzanne said she enjoyed it very much. Renee says, I love being here. Thank you, Renee. Hillary says, I'd love to see Bridget from Ghost Magnet as a guest. We are working on something with Bridget. We were going to have her as a guest for the Paranormal podcast, but I think it would be great for this show as well. So we'll see what we can do. Great suggestion. Jamadi said, I loved everything about this format. 2 thumbs up. Thank you so much, Jamadi. John Barnes, $5 super sticker. Thank you so much, John. That really means so much, and it does help us. There are costs associated with everything we do. So really, we appreciate it when people can and do chip in. Thank you so much. Let's see. Great show. A little early for me. I upgraded my Mac. Yikes. Could barely get here. So slow. Well, I hope that it all works out for you with the Mac. Let's see here. Networking is great. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Lena says, this is a good little bonus. Thank you, Jim. Fishmaster97, hope to see more live video this year. Kate says, thanks, Jim. Great content as usual. Marsha loves it. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is just a lot of fun. I appreciate it. And I really enjoy interacting with you guys. And when we do these holiday parties every year, I'm always like, I wish I did this more often. And the only way to do something is just to do it. And I think sometimes with YouTube and video, I got too hung up on, if I do it this way, it won't work. And I do it that way, it won't work. And it's like, well, it was paralysis by analysis. And I'm just like, I'm going to do what I want. And if people tune in, great. And if they don't tune in, that's okay. We'll see. So we'll see. And so far, you guys love it. So I'm glad. Phil says, love the show, though I'm about to get abducted by a UFO unhappy female oppressor, i.e. the wife. That's funny. Renee said, can you get Marianne Winkowski again? She was great. It's been years since I talked to Marianne, probably that George Norrie event I did down in Columbus in 2018, I think it was. Sandy says, this is great. Thank you so much, Sandy. Jake says the Plus Club is great. And certainly if you want to check out my Plus Club, I even have this little banner here. You can get access to over 2,000 episodes, not on the free feeds. Get the Plus Club at jimharoldplus.com. We would love for you to do that. And I thank you so much for that comment, Jake. So I think that'll about do it. The one thing that I would ask is that you subscribe to my YouTube channel at youtube.com/Jim Harold and spread the word about the videos. That's how we're going to get more because we really have to focus. Every year I look at things that work and don't work. And if things don't work, we either make them go away or we tweak and change them if they don't work 100% and they don't seem to be catching on. If things work, we continue and double down. You've seen that with the Paranormal podcast and Campfire over the years. So basically, the decision is yours. And one of the ways you can vote, probably the primary way you can vote, is to subscribe to my YouTube channel at youtube.com/Jim Harold. Even if you're watching this on Facebook, I highly recommend doing it that way because you get notifications and really, honestly, YouTube is a video first platform. And that's what really moves the needle for us and helps us. If you subscribe to that YouTube channel, youtube.com/Jim Harold, and make sure you hit the notification bell, as the kids say. Well, thank you so much. Hope you have a great week. We have another full week of content coming up for you next week in the paranormal realm. And we'll see you here again on the new show, Jim Harold Live. Thank you so much. And stay safe. And of course, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't say, stay spooky. Bye-bye.